Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of GenAI Vlog. So in this episode, I want to walk you guys through a couple of interesting problems that I have come across when I was diving into the R&D of browser use. So it touched upon a couple of different building blocks, right? How do you pass the data, right? Data transfer. What would that problem look like? Touch upon backend, touch upon front end. When you're going across multiple different languages, what would the protocol look like, right? So in this episode, I don't really actually have a script plan. I'm just gonna share the screen, share you guys with the web app I built, and just to kind of walk through my thought process. So in the beginning, right, let's start. This is the SEC data API UI that I built, right? It's called Open Ledger Application. The problem statement here is if you think about Bloomberg, right? It charges you 30 grand a year, right? But SEC filing is ugly and difficult to navigate. That's why this website exists, right? It solves that pain spot. So notice that up to this point, there's no AI involved, right? I have the SEC API. I overlay a user interface on top of it. I think that's what makes this concept interesting here is because it's product centric, right? It's product first. It's not AI first, right? So I don't know if that's the correct way to go. In my head, that's what's making sense at the moment. So I thought just to share that with you. Immediately, the problem becomes how do we understand this API call, right? We have a whole portfolio of API call. They are listed out on the left-hand side on this menu bar. User can click on it. Right, for example, I can query API of Tesla. I can create a table widget. It will create a widget here. I can resize it, right? I can drag and drop depending on how I want to create this user dashboard. And then these links are presented in front of me. I can click on it, go to that particular link, and then carry on my workflow. So it's a data query user interface. It's a modern looking data query user interface that allow user to edit their own dashboard. So let's say that's a product, right? That's the product. Now we need to think about the pain spot. Now, of course, if you are an analyst in investment banking, or if you are researcher from some sort of research organizations doing financial research, you might have a couple of things that you already know that you want to click on, right? You want to click on query, then you click on that. You want to click on insider trading, fine, then you click on that. That assumption assumes that this part of the user of the demographics already know these are the buttons they need to click on. But what about the user that are a little bit unfamiliar with this whole thing, right? Not just this platform per se, but also the different types of forms that's required to be filed as the SEC. So in that case, what do we do, right? Not everyone know what is the NCEN reports. Not everyone know what is the 13D ownership filing, right? Unless you read this thing, right? So we're talking about the pain spot. Uh, that is your platform has blind spot that the user doesn't know of, right? So that's the gap. That's a gap. That's a pain spot. Now let's use AI to solve this problem. So that's how in my brain, what's making sense, right? It's a product first. It's a pain spot first pipeline. It's a pain spot first strategy. We really want to have a strong motivation to use AI. Otherwise, putting a chatbot on your platform, kind of like raising the question of what are we even doing here, right? So with all that being said, let's close down this window. Let's say I have a couple of things I'm not familiar with. Let's just use insider trading because lots of people ask me that question. I'm assuming that's an interesting question for most people. Insider trading, right? First question immediately becomes what is insider trading? Okay, so you can start with what is insider trading. This is a generic question that in the system is considered a simple Q&A, right? Doesn't really require a whole lot of tool calling, right? In this case, it's an explanation, and then the chatbot does a little bit of a RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation, in a sense that, okay, we know this is the Form 4 filing. Form 4 filing is a particular API that exists in our toolkit. That's one of the products, right? One of the premium features. and it exists on our platform. Great. Maybe that is one API call, maybe that is 2 to 3 API call, whatever that is, right? So now, from user query, we have identified the product. We have identified the product all within this chatbot assistant. So in that case, uh, now we need to trying to understand what is it that the user wants, right? So immediately the chatbot starts saying, oh yeah, a couple of features. What do you want me to do, right? What's the goal here? What do you like me to show you inside the trading feature? I can open it, whatever, right? So a user might say, hey, uh, yeah, show me the insider trading feature. So in that sense, it kicks off a little bit of product tour. That's the widget. It highlights this widget, and then in this case, it's just a matter of highlighting. So done. That opens up the widget, right? Now that's not it, right? You really want to guide users through the user journey. You really want to think about how AI can help out to enhance, to improve the user experience, to improve user journey, and really to drive to the core of what that goal is, and then how you can understand the demand from the user and put the product in front of them. So I think this is the strategy that we're going for. At least this is what I'm going for when I build this platform. So AI now says, oh yeah, I open this feature, whatever, I gave you a tour. It has all these different things that's on this widget. And then again, what do you want me to do, right? You can click through it if you want to. You can let me do. I can click through it, right? Or you want to have a specific company. The user are probably gonna skip most of these paragraphs in the middle. Typically humans read the beginning and the end, right? So in the end, maybe ask for a particular company. Great. So maybe I say, I want to, or maybe I just say directly, help me search Tesla insider trading. Um, and maybe that requires a tool to enter Tesla, hit the button for me, right? And then extract the results. Boom, there you go, just like that, right? Now the results are in front of me. Now I know that, okay, Zhu Xiaotong, he's an SVP or she's an SVP, 520,000 shares, price at 435, January 12th, 2026. Okay, when I'm recording this episode, that is January 16th, right? So January 12th is just a few days ago. So this is fairly new, right? Fairly new. And then January 6th, 2026. Okay, so this is like a week ago. This guy or this woman had a sale as a director, right? I don't know who this person is. And then that's a transaction, right? After the transaction, you record the post shares, right? Post transaction holdings, right? 635,000 shares. This is a public information. It's a public information because it's on SEC. It's being audited, and then the reason it's on SEC is because it's following the rules, the regulations of what constitutes as an investor, right? This person holds hundreds of thousands of Tesla shares. Tesla is like 400 something dollars. Uh, of course, I will probably call that insider, right? You hold a certain amount of voting rights, right? And then if you do something, obviously it's recorded, right? So I am not disclosing something that's private. This platform is a nice modern looking user interface to help user to navigate the SEC website because SEC website is a little difficult to navigate, right? But of course, you can expand this window and then you can click around this, scroll up and down, things like that. And then you can also filter, right? Click on these buttons. It will actually take you to the exact SEC filings, and then you can of course verify, right? This is the form 4. On the form 4, there's whatever XYZ, right? You can click on this, and then again verify who are we talking about, right? The person here, or it's probably existing the name somewhere up here, uh, Murdoch James, right? You get the idea. So that's what makes this episode interesting. Now that I explain the product and how it has Copilot helping you out, now let me explain the pain spot, the challenges. So I think almost all companies, if you're a software as a service, almost all companies is trying to figure this out, right? They have some sort of web UI, and then they have some sort of product they're selling, right? Whatever that is, right? They have a nice looking thing, probably much better than this one I'm building. They have buttons on left hand side, and then they have user login. They probably have a chatbot on the right hand side. A lot of companies are trying to figure this out, right? So what is the challenge? Here's what the challenge. I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming if you're a large company, you should already have your product, right? You should already have your product. Otherwise, how could you become a large company, right? So product comes first. What is your product? And what does the API look like, right? So API is just a matter of getting data, right? It's a matter of getting data from one place to another, obviously with appropriate security protocols that's following appropriate regulations, right? We're assuming all that's handled securely in the API call. So you have your product, you have your API call ready, you have your engineering team doing the CI/CD on these things, and you have a platform. Now let's say you have that. The question now becomes, okay, the data now needs to come out of this user interface, and then on the other side, the data needs to come from the prompt, and then you need to shove these two things into the large language model, and sometimes you need to shove a third thing, which is the web browser, right? But in this case, I build a product and then I build a chatbot. So when I build a chatbot, I implemented the rules of all these features on the left-hand side already in the chatbot tools. So that helps me get past looking at the website, looking at the DOM, looking at HTML objects, looking at all of that, right? And the way I do it is not by hard coding each feature one by one to tell the LLM, oh yeah, this is the feature number one, this is feature number two, this is feature number three. I build the API first, I build the product first, following this thing called a feature registry protocol, right? So the feature registry protocol helps the LLM understand all of the features completely in one go so that we do not need another engineer to write another set of code after they invent one of these new features, right? This manual bar on the left hand side has like about 20 something features. Let's say tomorrow I add a new feature somewhere down here. That's a bunch of new code, right? Whatever code, TypeScript, JavaScript, whatever, that's existing on this UI. Any user can click on it, it will create a form, whatever, right? If tomorrow I add a new feature, I do not need to tell this chatbot that this is a new feature, right? I basically feed that snippet of code into this thing called a feature registry protocol, and then the chatbot will automatically know what that feature is and will automatically register that as one of its tool. So that makes this whole agentic framework a live and breathe system that can expand its capabilities as your engineering team is cooking up new products. So, in other words, this is really a product first. It's a product first platform, and the Copilot is enabled to help out from that perspective. Um, so that's challenge number one, which is where data come from, right? Challenge number two is now the question becomes, okay, LM receive the data. Now, what do you want to do? Right? Let's go back to the beginning of the conversation. In the beginning of the conversation, if the question has nothing to do with calling a tool, but can imply or it needs gaps to get to that particular tool calling, then maybe the goal here is to help the user to get there. So now this Copilot, this AI, is acting as a hand-holding assistant to kind of trying to get that goal, get that purpose, get that motivation out of the user. So I think this is what's interesting about this, and that really require basically just context, right? The context here is referring to essentially a paragraph, right? A snippet of a paragraph to explain here are a list of APIs. That's a list of your products on the left-hand side. And user might ask these questions and user might have these intents. And under what scenario will this be a match? So the system prompt has that context, and the system prompt with that context now is fed into the LLM, so LLM knows to ask this, right? If you ask ChatGPT what is insider trading, ChatGPT will interpret it as, oh yeah, you don't know what the concept is. Let me give you a definition, right? Um, That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is the answer that this LLM is providing, not just trying to answer the question, but also trying to guide users through the product. So I think this is what a lot of companies or a lot of executives are missing the point here is they think of AI assistant as is a standalone project that just plug in some data and then it will work. I think that's probably too little. It's a little bit too simple, right? I think the context here is what's really important, and context actually does not come from engineers, right? You can ask your engineer all day long, what the context is. They're not going to know that, right? The context here come from the product, and the context here not only come from the product, but also come from how your user is interacting with your product. So really, we're talking about a domain knowledge. Really, we're talking about a user experience problem, right? It's not really an engineering problem. So from that perspective, now you know what are the important things to feed in the LM, right? That's the second challenge, which is you gather data. Now where does data go, right? This is very important data. Now that we have agreement on that, what's important, now let's feed that into LM. LM now needs to do something, right? Okay, so that's the next challenge. What exactly is the LM doing, right? LM certainly give you a bunch of prompt. Okay, the prompt here is a response. Great. The response needs to lead to the product. It cannot just be a generic question answer like chit-chatting, right? A lot of LLM, it's just chit-chatting. And then people immediately be like, oh yeah, let's put guardrail around it. You can put guardrail all day long. You're not going to cover 100% of the edge case, right? You're going to run into a rabbit hole of having tons of meetings with security, having tons of meetings with the IT, just to trying to cover all bases. You can certainly do that. I'm not saying don't do that, right? I think that's important. I'm just saying that's not the only important thing, right? There are other important things. How about your LLM is guiding user to that final goal? What is the final goal? The final goal is to have user click on the widget, see the results from the widget, which is what the user initially wants. But user doesn't have a language to do that, right? How am I supposed to know if I'm first time seeing this platform? How am I supposed to know that there's a button here um, called insider trading? I have to scroll up and down, and I have to click on that. I have to enter this ticker. I have to click on this button. If the first time user, they're not going to know that, right? They're not going to know that. Or if the user is a little bit of out of a domain, they're not going to know that, right? So how do you allow the user to really, at the essence, to use your product how it's designed, and also hopefully, the product answers the user question and supplies. It's a provider of a solution of the user demand, right? The product exists, so presumably you have a product team work that out already, right? This product is indeed solving a problem, right? So now it's a matter of, okay, let's do a little hand holding to guide a user through that user journey. Which is why here it needs to land on do you want me to show you XYZ, right? So that kickoff behind the scene, that kickoff product tour, kick off a bunch of other tools, then the LLM knows that's the direction we're going for, right? So this system is designed to be a much more powerful than just a generic chatbot, toss some data in, and then put a million guardrails around it, right? Because this system has a centralized theme to guide users through what they want to do. Um, and it's more targeted to the particular product. How do we do that? It's because we have a product first, we have a platform first, and then we build Copilot over it. So I think that's what's interesting. That actually makes the entire Copilot design much more easier, right? And then you want to, in terms of what the LLM is doing, it's tool calling, right? It's tool calling. And then on top of that, you can see into these buttons, right? For example, to put the Tesla ticker there, that's actually a tool, right? It's a tool that knows how to do that. To click on this button, that's a tool that knows how to do that, right? And then these two information are not made up by LLM. It needs to come from the context provided from the user. Even though user doesn't know that, but that's why we're here, right? We guide users through that journey so that user knows that's what they want to do, right? So hopefully this gives you a good picture of what I mean by product first AI assistant. Now I can show you a little bit of a system diagram. This is a system diagram. I think it's quite interesting. As a matter of fact, I designed this Markdown file in a way that I can just give this to Cloud Code and Cloud Code will just do it for me, right? But this is not like a complete novel thing. If you're a software engineer in the field for 10, 20 years, you've probably seen similar things, and you've probably seen more sophisticated system than the one that I'm showing you right now, right? So you have some sort of web app, it's a multi-container, and then, for example, you have a front-end container. Front-end container, it's a user interface, right? The widget, the canvas, the sidebar, the design, the color, right? All that stuff. And then you have some sort of um, um, a port via engines. The engines called the backend, right? The backend is another container, and this is all the API products. Each API will have its own channel. Of course, it's secured with API keys, with the usage plan, all that. And then it's able to grab data from one place to another so that the front end can display that data, right? That's the product. We're talking about something very simple, user interface, calling API, API give you data, user interface display the data. That's your product, right? Product is defined. Once product is defined, let's put Copilot over it, right? Let's put AI over it. How do you do that? Here, I actually put the Copilot on the front end, directly on the front end. The front end actually calls a Copilot container, and this is actually a Copilot runtime container, which is actually currently, I think it's only JavaScript based. It actually does not have a Python based. So if your backend is like a fast API in Python, then obviously this need to be a separate container, right? So the backend container, if it's a fast API, then it needs to be its own container because it's a Python based. If you're using Copilot runtime container, that's its own container because it's JavaScript based, right? Or you can also use Next.js, but Next.js is basically JavaScript. So the Copilot from the front end directly calls the Copilot runtime container, and then it does its thinking, right? The thinking is essentially this LLM. So that's what the system look like, and that's how the system is designed. So on a high level, right? So now, how does it communicate? I can probably take you to this picture here. Um, so uh, this app is written by TypeScript. The Copilot actually calls the container. It's in the Node.js. It has an Express script, and then it has a Copilot runtime. The Copilot runtime interacts with an LLM. So that's the front end. Backend has a bunch of services. The feature registering will register all the tools, right? So it will know the widgets, know the tools, and then that's communicated with this hook. Um, so once you have that, you have all the services. And then inside of the widgets, right? Let's say however many premium widgets you have, you then is able to grab it from the product API, right? So grab it from the backend API, which now it's from Python fast API. So now it becomes a very interesting thing. It becomes a very interesting design. Now we have a three-way conversation, right? The UI is front end. Front end has a Docker image. The Copilot is its own Docker image, JavaScript based. And then the backend services, that's Python fast API. That's another Docker image. So we have three Docker images that they're having a three-way conversation. So that's how the system is designed, and that's how, in my mind, this makes sense. What I see from most applications so far is they don't have that third application, right? Their language model, it's written in Python, and that sits inside of a service within the same image. I think that's fine. I think depending on your design, you can be Python based, no problem at all. And then the front end just calls the API, right? And the API come from the same location. Um, I think that's fine. In this case, uh, how I envision this is if you do things that way, the reason number one is Copilot runtime is JavaScript based and doesn't really go in there. That's like the biggest blocker. The second blocker is if you do things that way, this service uh, folder or the service repository that supports that backend Docker image, we're just going to get infinitely bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it makes partitioning very difficult, makes security very difficult. It's also very cumbersome to navigate, very cumbersome to inspect. So that's why I separated the product API from the Copilot API. So we have three Docker image that they're having a three-way conversation via API calls. And everything is within one web app. Everything is within one instance. So that's the system design. It's what's making sense in my head. And it also allows me to consider this platform as a product-based platform. Why? Because if I remove the Copilot instance, these two Docker images still works. They works independent from the third Docker image. So in other words, I design a system in a way that if you take one away, the other two can still function, can still do their job. So that's another way to think about this, and that's another benefit there, which is this interdependency. So there you go. Hopefully you like the episode. Hopefully this episode give you some insight. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.